This is a solutions event. This is what's happening.
After 5 successful events in North America, the Freedom Cell Network is partnering with Free Humanity to bring the People's Reset to Bath, UK. In 2020, as the World Economic Forum announced the Great Reset Initiative, millions of people around the world began questioning the narratives being fed to them.
You must stay at home.
Millions of free-thinking people responded with protests, marches and rallies focused on waking up the rest of the world to the dark agenda of control and technocracy hidden beneath the so-called health initiatives.
We need to know every single piece of information.
We've lived that freedom message today. We've been a walking symbol of what it means to be free.
While the world was reacting to the rapid expansion of tyranny, the Freedom Cell Network sought to promote solutions by launching the Greater Reset Activation in January 2021, a 5-day gathering designed to inspire, motivate, and activate freedom lovers into action. The Greater Reset highlighted the importance of localization, decentralization, individual and collective liberty, bodily autonomy, and freedom of choice.
The technocrats at the United Nations and the World Economic Forum are now hosting the Summit of the Future in New York City in September 2024.
At that meeting, governments of the world are expected to sign the so-called Pact for the Future. We reject their vision and the assumption that they speak for humanity. Join us in September for the People's Reset UK, our summit for our future.
Over 3 days, we will gather in community, celebrating our victories and successes, whilst continuing to highlight solutions under 5 holistic themes.
Liberate your mind, body, and spirit.
Permaculture and food independence.
Building parallel networks.
Empowering technology.
And building free and conscious communities. 24 top-notch speakers, including Neil Oliver, Charles Dowding, Dan Aston Gregory, Nigel Howlett, John and Rebecca Bush, and many more.
We'll also be hosting the People's Reset concert featuring international artist Dub FX, as well as Presence, 33, and more talented performers to come. Join us in Bath in September 2024 as we collaborate and build the parallel systems of the future.
Join us for the next evolution of the Greater Reset.
Join us for the People's Reset UK. Visit thegreaterreset.org to learn more and to get your ticket today.
This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone.
Don't you fucking tease that horse!
You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and tonight is September 11th, 2024. Please let me know if you can hear me coming through okay. This is episode 141 of the Conscious Resistance Live. Tonight is called Dissecting the Pyramid, and the Summit of the Future is here. We're going to be talking about my new episode of the Pyramid of Power. We're going to be talking about, of course, September 11th, and we're going to talk about next weekend's Summit of the Future in New York City. Thank you, Erie Fairy and other smiley face on YouTube, for letting me know the sound is okay. All right. So as I said, we got a lot to cover tonight. I've got my notes in front of me. I'm going to do my best not to get on too many rants, although I will say the last couple weeks, the last episode a few weeks ago, you guys seem to, let's just say it touched a nerve. My talk lately on calling out RFK and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Tulsi Gabbard and this whole thing, it really does strike a nerve whenever I release those clips and when I put that information out there, because there's some of you who agree very, very much so with me that there is a great inversion going on, that there's a co-opting of the freedom movement, of the truth movement that's being funded by powerful people. And that's what many of us are calling the mainstream alternative media. And I think it's something we do feel strongly about. And there's others of you out there who think I'm totally crazy and think that, Derrick, it's obvious Trump is the guy here to save the day. They hate him so much. Look, Dick Cheney's endorsing Kamala. Clearly, this is our guy, right? And it's just creating a very interesting dynamic, both online and I think in the real world. And I've said this for years, that there is a fracturing. I actually have this mini documentary that I do. It's been in my head for years, called The Fracturing, about how the different ways our world is sort of fracturing off into different pieces. And, the most basic one you could say is those who are NPCs, normies, whatever, just average people who aren't really paying attention, and those who are awake, right? That's one fracturing. But it's much deeper than that, right? You could say those who are eating GMO, poison, pesticide foods, and those who are not, and how over generations and years and decades, we're going to see these different populations fracture off even further, and ultimately till we are almost different humans. But you could do that even within the so-called awake, aware community, right? And what I'm speaking of specifically is those who believe they're awake and people who saw through the two-party system prior to 2016. And then when Trump came along, they thought, oh my God, this guy's mentioning 9/11. He's mentioning the Federal Reserve. He said something about JFK. Oh, he said he likes Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. He's really gonna defeat the deep state. And there are those who still believe that narrative 8 years later, despite evidence to the contrary. And there are those of us who, whether or not you ever bought into it, personally, I never bought into it, but for those who bought into it and then with time came to realize like, nah, Trump isn't what I thought it was. So that is a fracturing. I think that's one of the most important ones right now to discuss, because those of us who realize that Trump is the literal trump card of the New World Order, if you will, the Illuminati, the predator class, whatever word you want to use, the people at the top of the pyramid, he is their literal trump card. You can even go back to that board, that card game back in the 90s, the Illuminati card game. I used to have some of those cards. I think you can order them on Amazon now. And it's this card game all about being in the Illuminati. And there's a lot of things in there that look similar to real life, including the Twin Towers. There's a card in there that looks like Trump. There's some interesting things. So my point is, those of us who see through the lie and those who are still buying into it, that's another fracturing, right? But that's the truth movement. We're all kind of under this broader banner of truth, freedom movement, but there's truth, freedom media that's pro-Trump, and there's those of us who question it. And it's just how this interesting dynamic, how it's created that, I don't want to call it a division because it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it's absolutely a fracturing, and it's a fracturing in our mindset. Because think about this, there are going to be people, like, let's fast forward 20 years, right? And we go back to this time period. There'll be people who try to tell the story of the mid 2010s and say, this guy Trump came along and he almost defeated the deep state. They even tried to kill him. It was all the media, everybody was against him, this and that. And that's going to be their belief system. And then there are going to be those of us who say, oh my God, it was this huge psyop. Like, you wouldn't believe it. So many people who are waking up after George Bush and Obama, all of a sudden they fell for this new guy, even though he was totally authoritarian in his language and wanted to grow the police state in a lot of ways. He said just enough to sort of trick people and deceive people. And there was also this cult of personality around him. Let's just call it what it is. And so that's already two different perceptions of the world. And I'm fascinated by it. I'm also terrified by it, how so many of us who consider ourselves awake, the Q thing is absolutely part of it. Another sort of fracturing, you could say, of course, people who fell for COVID-19 and people who didn't, because that's a huge major world event. That's clearly going to shape people's perspective of the world at large, right? I mean, whatever you think about COVID-19 and what you believe in, that is going to shape the way you look at history, you look at the way you relate to other people, etc. So it's not just like, oh, we're making different choices. Yes, we're making different choices, but I'm talking about fundamental choices where your actual perception of the world around you is completely opposite or just totally different from the person who is technically living in the same physical meat space as you, but you might as well be living in different worlds, right? So it's really fascinating, and hopefully I'll get to that documentary at some point called The Fracturing. We started out by playing a trailer from the People's Reset. The People's Reset, I'm going to tell you guys more about in just a little bit after we talk about the Summit of the Future. But I do just want to say the People's Reset, it's happening at the end of this month, September 27th to the 29th in Bath, UK. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing my show tonight on a Wednesday as opposed to doing it. As you guys know, I usually do this on a Monday. I didn't do a show last week. I wanted to take a break off. I've been just super busy. If you've been following me online, you've been seeing I'm doing all kinds of interviews, trying to get the word out about the Summit of the Future, of course, and about the many other topics that I'm focused on. We also just released the next episode of the Pyramid of Power. We're going to talk about that. So I've been a bit busy, but I'm doing tonight's show because I'm going to be taking off starting this weekend for like 3 weeks. I'm not going to I'll be producing a few things, but I'm going to be taking some time off. And I say time off mainly from just being active on the internet, because I'm here in Mexico till Monday. Then I drive back to the US. That'll take 2 days. And then a day or two later, I fly to New York City for the Summit of the Future, where I'll be reporting live in New York City. I actually did get a pass, and I will be inside. I'll tell you guys more about that in a bit. And so I'll be doing that. And then after that, literally a day after coming back from the Summit of the Future, I fly to the UK to prepare for the People's Reset, which we are calling our summit for our future, because if you know my work, you know that I think it's important to focus on solutions. So if you're curious, I'll talk more about this in a little bit, but check out thepeoplesreset.org, thegreaterreset.org. As I said, September 27th to the 29th in Bath, UK. The other thing is this, my friends, you don't have to come in person. I recommend that if you can afford it and if you got the time, the energy, it's an investment in yourself. Totally 100% worth it. But as with all of the previous Greater Reset events, this will be streamed 100% for free. It's not a festival. This is an activation. If you want to come or you want to watch, you're going to hear about physical, mental, spiritual health. You're going to hear about permaculture, food independence. You're going to hear about agorism and building parallel systems, how to use technology in a way that's empowering rather than disempowering, and how to build free and conscious communities, whether you're talking about getting land, whether you're just getting organized in your local community. We've got 24 speakers. We've got 31 workshops for those who are going to be in person. There's going to be networking. There's going to be a networking night. There's also going to be like a cacao ceremony, music temple. There's also the People's Reset concert, which I get the pleasure of performing at, along with Dub FX and Presence, who we're going to debut a brand new music video from at the end of tonight's show. So you got concerts, you got networking, you got a community jam, this music temple. There's a lot going on. I'm so excited about it. This will be my second trip to the UK. And the cool thing is, besides this amazing event that I'm so blessed to organize and be involved with, as I said, we put out all the talks for free. It's streamed for free. You can watch every single talk we put out from the first 5 events right now on our Odyssey channel, which I believe is linked down here. Yeah, here you go. Odyssey channel. We've also got talks in Spanish. So we're really trying to reach people around the world with solutions. So even though we're going to talk about the Summit of the Future tonight, what I really want you to take away is that there are solutions out there, right? Yes, it's important. We know what the heck the globalists, the crazy people are up to, but more important, what are we going to do with our lives, guys? How are you going to live your life? How are you taking care of your family and friends? That's probably even more important, because if we just watch the shit show get worse, you're just going to walk right into the FEMA camp one day. Awake is not enough. It's time to get activated. It's time for you to actively be working on your pursuit of liberation and of freedom for yourself, for your family, and for the coming generations. Anything less than that is not enough. I'm sorry. It's simply not going to get us where we want to be. So we need to be focused on what our 2030 and beyond looks like. So that's at the Greater Reset, thepeoplesreset.org. Let me see. There's one other thing I wanted to mention on that. Oh, I will mention this, that we did just announce our Mexico event, because we've been doing it in Mexico since 2021. We just announced the dates for the Mexico event. Yes, we are crazy enough to plan 2 events at once. The People's Reset UK happening at the end of September. The Morelia People's Reset Mexico happening January 29th to the February 2nd. And this is right at the same time that the Davos crowd is meeting in Switzerland. We're once again going to gather in person. Same thing, 5 days, 5 themes. In UK, it's just 3 days, but in Mexico, it's 5 days. We've announced some new speakers, including Ruben Lenguas, who's a Mexican journalist, really amazing guy. Aaron Day, Ryan Christian is going to be speaking as well. And there's a few others we need to add on here. Hannah Maria. So there's going to be some great speakers. We're going to have at least 40 speakers in person in Mexico. Come check it out. All right, guys, we talked about the events. You guys know it. I just want to make it clear. This isn't me trying to sell you something. If you can afford to go, great. But either way, watch for free at home. Organize with your friends and family. Get together, focus on the day and the theme that is most beneficial to you at this time in your life, and then take the ideas and apply them. All right? We got to do more than just be passive watchers of the world around us. All right, so let's talk about 9/11. Let's get into it. Let's get into it while we can. So I have been a 9/11 truther, I guess you could say, since the very first days of my activism. I woke up in 2009, and one of those early things I was waking up to was the 9/11 attacks, the 9/11 conspiracy. I got involved in an activist group in Houston called the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. You might have heard with them. I'm not an architect, obviously. I was just attending as a supporter, helping out with documentary screenings and doing things like that. And I've told the story before, but it was actually in 2008 or so, before I ever even really fully woke up. Somebody handed me at this festival in Houston, this street festival, I actually still have it. They handed me a 9/11 was an inside job sticker. And I took it. I just thought, oh, that sounds edgy or whatever. I don't know. I didn't really think too deeply about it. I took it home and I put it on my keyboard in my music room, and I didn't think about it for a while. And then one day I decided to search that phrase. And of course, on the sticker, if you guys remember, it's an Infowars.com sticker. So it led me down the Alex Jones rabbit hole. And then if you know how Infowars works, I mean, they write some original articles, but a lot of it is just aggregation from other websites. So from there, that led me to other more reputable websites, I'd say, like Activist Post, whose friends and allies that I still read to this day. And yeah, I mean, I started going to 9/11 first in 2010 on the 9th anniversary of 9/11. I went to Washington, D.C. I went to the Pentagon. And I, just kind of went there with some activists. There was some marches. It's been a big part of my journey, like from the beginning. And then starting in 2011, the 10th anniversary, I went to New York City to connect. And even 10 years ago, or even on the 10th anniversary, the movement had already shrank from the heyday of, say, 2005, 2006, 2007, when Alex Jones and Luke Rukowski were getting a lot of attention. And I don't particularly trust either one of those men. And Luke is definitely part of the mainstream alternative media. But nevertheless, those were the documentaries that I found, 9/11 Truth Rising, 9/11 Police State, Alex Jones documentaries, stuff like that. That led me to realize there's a movement of people, and I'm just like, I'm going to go to New York City. There's something happening. There's like a film festival, and there's going to be marches and rallies. So I went there, and it was an amazing experience. Honestly, that was the first time I left Houston and left my kind of local scene of doing activism. I was like, all right, I'm going to travel. I was a broke ass activist, and I took like a freaking 48-hour Greyhound bus from Houston to New York City. I'll never do that again. And just survived on the cheap pizzas. I was like, I got to be here. I was just like in my early 20s and just felt like I had to be there. And I met a lot of amazing activists, some who are still friends to this day, good friends, in fact. And I got to see what it was like on the ground during 9/11 in New York City. I honestly think it's one of the most intense times to try to do activism. It's one thing to debate people on the internet, my friends. That's a whole thing in itself, and maybe not always fruitful. A lot of the time, not always fruitful. But take it out of the computer digital world and go in person in front of the buildings with the buildings behind you, which is what the local New York City 9/11 Truth Group does. They go there every weekend. They're probably still there. I haven't been in years. I went from 2011 till 2018, I think, to the 9/11 rallies. I helped organize some marches. I kind of stepped up and tried to play my role as I was, a young activist. But I met so many amazing people, and they go every weekend to the outside of the Twin Towers to Ground Zero, and they put up these boards that have information about the, controlled demolition and Israel's role and this thing, all the different elements of 9/11. And they just set those up, and they just stand there with flyers, and people just come up from all over the world. I mean, New York's, of course, a very big international city. So people are coming from all over the world. And of course, they're coming to the fake 9/11 Memorial Museum that has all this propaganda and garbage. And so the 9/11 truthers are out there passing out flyers. And what surprised me the first few years is that you get a lot of positive responses. Actually, there are people who I helped me realize, like, wow, okay, maybe this isn't as crazy as they want us to believe. Like, maybe people really do question what's going on in the world around them, especially because I would meet foreigners, people who are like, I'm visiting New York from this other place. And they were like, oh, yeah, we don't trust the 9/11 story. We knew that something was wrong. And it was just a big eye opener for me. It's like, wow, okay, I'm just this young activist. I've had, friends, parents at the time tell me, you're crazy, that, you're going into conspiracy world or whatever. And here I am meeting other adults from different parts of the world who are open to it. And at the same time, I've also been spat on. I've been, of course, yelled at. I've been told, get out of this country, go to Syria, go fight. You don't like America, go fight in Russia, go fight in Syria. All the usual kind of jingoistic propaganda. And it's an intense thing. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you think you like arguing online? Well, take your game to New York City during 9/11. I guarantee you this weekend will be a very impactful time. Go out there with the 9/11 truthers, try to talk to people face to face. This is a lost art that a lot of people really never focused on because you've grown up so much digitally with your activism. Talking to human beings face to face, handing a flyer, or like some people do, they'll set up the computer or the phone and just, here, watch this building collapse and tell me what you think it looks like. Have a visual display and then have a discussion. And of course, sometimes arguments break out. Sometimes chants break out. It's just like a high energy. I love it, honestly. I feel like I cut my teeth, like got my experience in New York City on 9/11 for years at a time. And a lot of that is on my website. So I share all this to say, this has been a really crucial thing for me. I mean, I was 17. I was a junior in high school when the Twin Towers started coming down, and the teacher let us watch it for a little while. And it's been a big part of my journey. And even though I don't focus on it so much anymore, I haven't been to New York for 9/11 in 4 or 5 years, at least 5 years at least, it's still near and dear to my heart. And of course, trying to expose this issue is something that the world continues to need if we're ever going to get to a better place. So let me just show you a couple of things real quick. If you visit theconsciousresistance.com, guys, you will see our newsletter. Please subscribe there if you want to get the latest updates and the latest content. And as you scroll down, you're going to see we have these categories. It looks a little different on mobile than on desktop. I'm always on my laptop, so it might look a little different. But we have these categories here. You can see 5G, 9/11 Truth, a bunch of different things. This is breaking down my work into categories that I've done over the last 15 years. You can click on this 9/11 Truth tab, and it has every report. I'd say about 95% of the reports that I've done on 9/11 over the years, including my 2015 documentary, which is more of like a short summary. I mean, it's not like a super deep dive like some of these others, but it's based on my experience. It's called Declassify 9/11 Truth Documentary. You can look at the various interviews I've done over the years, including with Ted Walter, with Peter Dale Scott, Richard Gage, of course, Christopher Bollian, who's all about the Zionism angle. You can see me confront the former EPA head, Christine Todd Whitman, who told the first responders they were safe to go to deal with the dust, and they were, everything was going to be fine. Of course, that's why a lot of people got cancer. You can see me doing man on the street interviews, talking to people about 9/11. And as I mentioned, you can go back and look at my early years, 2015, 2014, and some of the videos I shot on the ground in New York City. People yelling at us, trying to talk to people. You can see interviews with Jim Mars I did back in 2014 about Israel and 9/11, some short articles I've written, a lot of the different work. I mean, there's a whole history there. So if you want to get caught up on my particular work, I know there's a lot of people sharing their 9/11 content stuff today. You can find this at theconsciousresistance.com/911-truth and check that out there. One other source I want to share with you is from our friends over at the Free Thought Project, particularly Don Villa, who's a good guy, good writer. This is called A Crash Course in 9/11 Truth, 7 documentaries you want to see. I can't say I've seen all these, but it's a good place to start. I think that any recommendations from them will at least get you thinking, whether you agree with all the conclusions. 7, The Smoking Gun. So that's a documentary. You can go on. Let me see what else we got. Explosive Evidence, The Science Supporting Controlled Demolition. Those 2 are from Architects and Engineers. Someone Would Have Said Something, The Whistleblowers. It's a documentary about the whistleblowers. Of course, James Corbett's documentary, 9/11 War Games. That's a bonus they throw in here. That's an important one to check out. The Cover-Up, 9/11 Suspects. That's also from Corbett. I mean, he's just the master at these things and gone deep. 9/11 Suspects, totally worth every moment of your time. Follow the Money, which leads to documentary from James, 9/11 Trillions. Great documentary. Another one called Foxes in the Hen House. And then what else we got? They also mentioned Fabled Enemies from Jason Burmis, which I still think is a classic. And then he says the film that started it all. And of course, that is Loose Change. And I know there's a lot of mixed opinions about Loose Change and the different versions of it. But nevertheless, if you're new to 9/11, if somehow you've made it this far in your journey, you haven't gone down the 9/11 rabbit hole yet, I can't claim that everything out there you're going to find is credible. There's a lot of garbage, just like with any of these research topics. You got to be able to filter through some of the garbage and get to the good stuff. I recommend my work, obviously. I recommend James Corbett's, and I recommend this documentary list. All these articles, by the way, will be included at theconsciousresistance.com when I post the show notes after we end. But you can find this article here at thefreethoughtproject.com right now if you'd like to. And yeah, so I encourage you to continue to question, investigate 9/11. I mean, it feels almost like we have to say that, like in terms of, yeah, the battle goes on. I mean, again, when I was an idealistic younger activist, I thought maybe there's a chance there's going to be a real investigation. Something's going to change. People are going to finally start questioning 9/11 until I recognized that I had friends who were 9/11 truthers who were in the 60s, and they've been fighting to freaking get the truth out about JFK since back then when they were in high school. And I had one of them kind of pat me on the head a little bit and be like, the truth's never going to come out, and it was a hard realization, and I don't want to manifest that. I hope and pray for the truth to come out, but we have to understand. I mean, when you understand 9/11, not only as, okay, for one, when it comes to false flags, you guys may have heard this before. If not, I encourage you to check out my episode of the Pyramid of Power called The False Flag Deception. But there's typically this view that you either have what they call a MIHOP or a LIHOP. They made it happen on purpose or they let it happen on purpose. This is when people, government agencies, intelligence agencies, they get a warning about some alleged terrorist attack. whether or not it's real or not is a whole other thing. But let's say they get a warning about a legitimate terrorist attack and they're like, we could allow this to happen and take advantage of it. That whole never let a good crisis go to waste. That's a let it happen on purpose, lie hop. Or they literally fund the alleged terrorists. They engineer things. They move stuff around and make it happen on purpose, my hop. So there's still a discussion about what 9/11 was or is. But the point is, when it comes to false flags, 9/11 is one of the biggest. So I encourage you to go to the thepyramidofpower.net, and you can see all 4 seasons of that we've released so far, and including we put the first two seasons in Spanish. You can check it out there. Click on season 4. It'll open up here, and you've got the technocratic state, the false flag deception, and we're about to go over the latest episode, which we just released, called the Pedo-Class. But I encourage you to watch the false flag deception. It's not focused on 9/11, although it does give you a little bit of a summary of 9/11 and the 9/11 truth movement. It's mainly focused on the Oklahoma City bombing and the Syria gas attacks claims, which are also a false flag event. So the point is, these things do happen. And, it's hard, I think, for some people to wrap their mind around this. Honestly, I actually tweeted earlier today I was posting on social media saying, I've never really understood here, let me just quote myself real quick, because I don't know what I said exactly, but it's basically making the point here that I don't really get how people who are super awake in some areas then think that voting is going to fix things. What I wrote is, I guess I've never understood how some people can be open to the idea that the 9/11 attacks were not done by Osama bin Laden and Muslim terrorists hiding in caves, but rather allowed to happen and helped along by US, British, and Israeli intelligence agencies, and then turn around and advocate for voting. Like, you understand the depth and the depravity of control these people exert over our world, and you think you're going to fix things with voting. You don't think that the predator class doesn't have that on lock already. And for example, and I've said this before, it's really weird to me. And if RFK's team would let me interview him, which they refused to, which is why I had to chase him down in the hallway and ask him about Zionism. If they would let me interview him, I just wanted to ask a simple question, which I think is a genuine question. It probably would open up some interesting dialogue. I said RFK Jr. acknowledges that the CIA had a role in his father and uncle's death, and at the same time, he thinks voting is going to fix things. Like, it's beyond my understanding of, like, okay, maybe he's still just trying to get a message out, whatever. Like I said, maybe I'm just out of touch, but this just doesn't seem logical to me. And of course, this doesn't mean that I'm black-pilled or everything's hopeless, because the reality is that politicians aren't the answer. The real hope is in you and me and all of us coming together and reclaiming our power and not putting our faith into corrupted politicians who are funded by the Zionists and the Bilderberg Group, and instead recognizing that voting is not going to fix things. I don't want to get off track. We're going to come back to exit and build later. We got some exciting announcements. But my point is, when you understand how the depth of this, and you understand that these freaking people are psycho, and they will pull false flag events, and they will kill their own people. They do not give a damn. And they will use them then to manipulate you emotionally to get whatever their end game is. When you understand that, I think, it's a little bit of a gut check and a reality check. Again, doesn't mean we should be black-pilled, doesn't mean things are hopeless at all. It just means we need to contend with the reality of what we're facing. And it's not a beautiful reality in terms of how sick these people are. But the other side is that we have the opportunity to take care of our own lives, to come together, to say, you know what, I'm not going to play your game anymore. I'm going to reclaim my own power. Anyways, before I get off track, let's talk about the Pyramid of Power. So as I mentioned, season 4, we have chapter 14, the false flag deception. We released this one back in June, I think, July. And we just released this Monday. I'm so excited about it. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw that we did a marathon and we played all 14 of the episodes in a row. And then on Monday night, we premiered the brand new episode, the Pedo-Class. I highly encourage you to watch this. Of course, and I'll say this again, this episode contains vivid discussions of child abuse. Viewer discretion is advised. It talks about my work on the Finders. Of course, it gets a little bit into Jeffrey Epstein, talks about the Utah ritual abuse investigation, talks about the role of religion, how you can find this sick, twisted behavior in all sectors of society. It's not just Democrats, and it's not just Republicans. It's not just black folks or white folks or Mexicans. It's not just the Japanese or the British. It's an all-pervasive thing in our society. You find it in teachers, coaches, police, politicians, celebrities, media people, etc. Obviously, just regular old people involved in this sick thing. And this is a reality. Like, we have to find a way to contend with it. This is the whole point of the Pyramid of Power, is like bringing you dark topics, but at the same time saying, hey, we have a chance. What can we do? How can we address these in a real way, not put our head in the sand and think about solutions? So this one, my goal with the Pyramid of Power, you guys have heard me say before, is to do episodes that are all 30 minutes or under. So it can just, be nice, and you can tell your friend, look, just sit down for 30 minutes. I promise. Just watch this episode, 30 minutes, and just tell me what you think, right? This one went a little bit over. It's 42 minutes, but it's because as we're getting deeper and progressing up the pyramid, it's a little bit harder to break down these complex topics with just 30 minutes. I'm still striving for that, but give me some grace if they go a little bit over. And these last 3 episodes with the season 4 are honestly, I think, like award-winning on another level. I'm so blessed to work with the editors that I do. All I do is do the hundreds of hours of research, narrate the audio, and puts together some direction on the script. They take it and just run with it and make it so beautiful. And these 3 episodes alone, I think, make the entire series worth watching. But the whole thing, I rewatched it as we were doing the marathon the other day, and I'm extremely proud of this work. I think this is some of the best work I've ever done, besides the many, many articles I produced. This stuff will stand the test of time, and I hope will continue to wake up people. Thank you all who are giving me very kind comments. Thank you those who say you use this to homeschool your kids, or you've used it to wake up your friends. Like, that's exactly the reason I put the effort and time in. As we get deeper, we're going to be going to some of these topics that are for those who are, more versed in the conspiracy world. But for those who are new, a lot of this stuff will be brand new, obviously. But even I've heard from friends who are seasoned researchers and saying every episode I watch the Pyramid of Power, I learned something new. And that's a big compliment for me, because I'm digging deep and I have my own original research. But as you guys know, the goal of this was to take the best books and the best documentaries that exist out there already from people like James Corbett and others over the years, and highlight them, not necessarily to reinvent the wheel when it's not necessary, but also to use my original research. So every episode, as I mentioned, tries to be under 30 minutes. It also features recommended reading, recommended watching. Hey, please check out this book if you want to learn more. Check out this documentary to get a deeper dive. And it ends with solutions. So it's a very conscious effort to try to wake people up, but also do it without being Alex Jones and doom porn and, the world's going to end and the police state's arriving tomorrow. Because I'll be honest, when I watched Endgame and all those things those years ago, they did help me, but I also was in panic freak mode. Like, some of you guys may know what I'm talking about. We're like, oh my God, it's about to happen. It's all about to happen. I got to freaking tell all my family. And you just drive people crazy. And I did that for a while. I call that like the Alex Jones phase, the confusion, sometimes angry, whatever, fear stage. And then eventually, hopefully, you get to a point of like, okay, this stuff is happening, but not right tomorrow. Like, I've got some time. Let me, get out of panic mode and start thinking about this logically, right? And so I had to do that. And this is the kind of series that I wish existed when I was first waking up. And also, man, it's such a difficult time, I think, to be waking up, post QAnon, like I was talking about earlier with the fracturing and people thinking Trump's a hero and this and that. Like, when you wake up, it's like, there's so many different directions and paths you could be pulled down, and it can be a scary thing. So this is a tool for you guys. I'm putting in a labor of love into this. I haven't been paid a single dime. Every bit of money we've raised over the last 3 years that we've been doing this has gone to pay my editors. Of course, when we're done, the goal is to turn it into a DVD series and to put it on USB drives and sell those and put those out into the world so you can own your own copies. And I'm probably going to turn this into a book as well, and basically just take all the scripts and kind of edit them to be more book format and then put it into a book. And we'll probably sell, hey, DVD or thumb drive with the Pyramid of Power book. Take it, go wake your friends up. So this is, one of my biggest life projects. And again, I'm very grateful to everybody who has watched and tuned in. Let's go ahead and watch a short clip from the Pyramid of Power, Chapter 15, the Pedo-Class. This clip was made by my editor, Stefano. Thank you, Steph, for all your hard work. And we will be putting out more clips on social media in the coming days. So I encourage you guys to send your friends. You can send them to thepyramidofpower.net. It's also, of course, at theconsciousresistance.com. And we have an Odyssey channel specifically just for all of the Pyramid of Power episodes. And now it is live on YouTube. And so far, none of them have been taken down. But let's check out this quick clip.
The longer one spends time tumbling down the rabbit hole, researching the various pieces of the Pyramid of Power, the more likely you are to learn about examples of child abuse. From teachers and sports coaches to law enforcement and celebrities and politicians, It certainly appears as if there is a society-wide problem with pedophilic behavior and the abuse of young children. Unfortunately, examples of this behavior can be found in all political parties, religions, ethnicities, professions, and lifestyles. A quick search on the news on any given day will reveal stories of arrests made on the local, regional, national, and international levels.
Right. So that is thepyramidofpower.net. Thepyramidofpower.net. That was just, like I said, a quick teaser. The whole thing is 42 minutes long. Go check it out. I mean, I was going to say I love it, and I kind of hesitated because I love it as much as you can love a documentary episode about pedophilia and child abuse. Obviously, super serious topic. But yes, as a director, as a writer, as a journalist, I'm excited. I'm proud of the work we've done. And it's all been 100% crowdfunded by you guys. So that's just the biggest blessing to me. All of you care enough to help us complete this series. And let me just tell you what's coming up. We have Chapter 16, which will be coming out towards the end of this year. I'd say probably November, maybe by my birthday on December 1st. Chapter 15 will be coming, or excuse me, Chapter 16. And Chapter 16, for those who don't know, I release these in quote unquote seasons, so 4 episodes at a time, and then we sort of take a break. So if you see on the website, it's broken up into seasons. So we're now on season 4, which is pretty much the end. The final normal episode is going to be called Religion and Secret Society. So the season 4 is the technocratic state, the false flag deception, the Pedo-Class, and then it'll go to religion and secret societies. And so for me, that is going to be an episode that'll probably trigger some of my audience. The things that we're going to report on about the role of religion in keeping people in mind control and the role of secret societies manipulating world events. That's where we're going to kind of conclude. And as you see, when you watch the episode, you'll see like every episode goes up the bricks of the pyramid. So we're at that final brick, the 16th. That's where things are going to end. But then in 2025, early 2025, we're going to have the final episode, the 17th episode, which is going to be all focused on answering who or what is at the top of the pyramid. And so that is going to feature all the people who've already been in this, including Whitney Webb, James Corbett, Richard Grove, G. Edward Griffin, Peter Dale Scott, David Icke is going to be in it, Daniel Esterlin. There's a few others who've contributed to it. Mark Passio is going to be in the next 2 episodes as well. It's going to be an epic end to it all, and I'm going to allow everybody to share their different views and opinions on who they are, whether that's people who say it's the Jesuits, it's the Jews, it's the reptilians, whatever. I'm going to let them share their views, and then I will offer my own thoughts based on my research, and we'll come to a nice conclusion. And this will be a tool you can use to wake your friends and family up. So here's the homework for you if you're interested. If you know somebody who specializes in that type of work, I'm talking about the high level, like pointing at who are the families, the Black Venetian nobility, the Jesuits, etc. I know of all these different theories. I've heard different things. I've watched a lot of stuff. But who do you think are the experts in those fields? I also plan to have Adam Green on there as well. I know he has a lot to say about religion and other things of that nature. I'm looking for somebody who is a quote unquote expert on the idea that the Jesuits are at the top of it. Again, I know there's others who say it's the Zionist lobby, and they're definitely up there. So feel free to reach out to me via social media or comment or email me to let me know who you think is who do you think is a great researcher in terms of the top of the pyramid. And I'm talking about quality journalists, educated people who know their shit, and they might end up being featured on the documentary series. So one more time, check that out at The Pyramid of Power, thepyramidofpower.net, and check out the latest episode. I really would appreciate it if you do so. The Pedo-Class. All right. Well, we're about to talk about the Summit of the Future. I'm going to take a very quick break, and we're going to come right back and talk about the Summit of the Future, guys. As I said a few moments ago, I am going to be in New York City reporting live from the Summit of the Future, and I actually got a pass inside. I'll tell you guys all about that when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Are you using your phone, or is it using you? Rise above mass surveillance and discover a phone that protects your privacy and communications.
Above Phone does everything your old phone does, without tracking you, while giving you complete control over your phone and apps. We are better than big tech. It works with any cell service. No forced logins, no advertising or tracking. Download apps privately. Control your phone and its apps with secure hardware. Introducing Above Suite. Protects your internet traffic. Private email on any device. Video call with friends privately. Encrypted chat, calls, and internet phone. Protect your searches and get results. Don't worry if you're new. Every phone includes a free 45-minute live call. You also get free email and chat support, free guides, and video courses. We can take back our technology. We're here to help with tools and education. You have the power.
Rise above with Above Phone.
AbovePhone.com.
So that's the Above Phone. Let me go ahead and just show you just so you guys can check that out a little closer. I know you guys hear me talk about Above Phone every show, and the reason I share about it is even though I don't use a phone, if I was using a phone, I would be using the Above Phone. My girlfriend, Miriam, my partner, she uses the Above Phone, and it's great. It's really cool. I mean, for example, we're driving around Mexico. We're going to some restaurant like we had to today that we've never been. You know, you can search engine and say, show me this restaurant's location. And then you get the address. And you go into Magic Earth or you go into Organic Maps. Their search engines sometimes are, you know, their internal search engine. They're sometimes better than others and they'll find local things. Sometimes you just got to copy the address and boom, I'm going to where I need to go without Google. Miriam uses this podcasting app that you can download any of the songs, any of the podcasts you want without Apple, without Spotify, any of that garbage in your phone. And there are solutions. So that's the whole thing. Exit build from big tech. Exclusive, you get $50 off if you use the abovephone.com/dbroze. And I think there's another discount if you use my last name Broze as well. So check that out for those of you who are interested in getting plugged into some new technologies. All right, let's talk about the old Summit of the Future. Let's get a show of hands in the class. How many people here have heard me talk about the Summit of the Future over the last year? Okay, a few of you out there. Cool. Well, thankfully, and a little annoyingly, if I'm honest, more and more people are finally paying attention to the Summit of the Future. In the last week, I've gotten probably more interview requests to be on podcasts to talk about the Summit of the Future, and I've got a couple more tomorrow and on Friday, which is great. Of course, I'm taking every single one, big and small, because I'm trying to get as many people to be paying attention to the Summit of the Future as possible. But wouldn't it have been great, guys, if people were warning others about this 6 months ago, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, where we could have organized a little better? I'm just venting here. I'm just saying. I'm going to New York City. Dan Aston Gregory, who's helping me with the People's Reset UK, he's our point man in the UK. He's flying all the way from the UK to come to New York City to represent his people. We got some other people coming from Sweden. And, you know, if you're out there and you live in New York City, let's rally outside across from the UN headquarters, September 22nd and 23rd. I'll be there the 20th, 21st as well. So next weekend, if you're interested, reach out. We're going to have some sort of physical presence there. I'm also going to be inside. As I mentioned earlier, I did get a pass to access this. Hopefully I won't be disqualified before I get there. So I'll, you know, sort of be quiet about how I got in there. I didn't do anything illegal, but I did get a pass, and I plan to go in there to observe as somebody who cares about this, you know, because technically this is the reality, my friends. I'm a stakeholder. You're a stakeholder, right? Doesn't necessarily mean we want the UN to succeed at their goals, but we are the alleged stakeholders that they claim they want to consult. So I'm going there as a representative of the rest of you and anybody else who cares to find out what exactly is going on this Summit of the Future. I'll outline why I think you should care in just a moment. If you've heard my reporting on this, you already know. But for those who don't know, you're about to find out. The point is, they claim they're speaking for the people. We're all stakeholders. They want to care about our voices. Well, I wasn't consulted. I don't know about you. So I figure I'm going to go in person. I'm going to, watch what happens. I'm going to document what I can. I'm going to look for politicians and UN representatives to potentially do interviews. And we'll do some live streaming from out there as well. And you should stay tuned for some videos. So like I said earlier, I'm going to be taking a break from putting out videos because I'm going to be on the road for the Summit of the Future and then going to the UK for the People's Reset, our summit for our future. So it has arrived now. I jokingly say I wish more people were paying attention, but I'm being real. And I'm grateful for the invites I've been getting. I'm thankful for those of you who've been sharing my articles and sharing my videos, but we need more people to be paying attention. Instead, so many people are freaking focused on the election and whatever drama of the week, whatever trending outrage of the week, instead of actually focusing on things. I'm not saying the only things that matter are the things I'm talking about, obviously, but focusing on things that that are going to impact all of us, not just the United States, but all of us. And this Summit of the Future is one of these things. So let's go ahead and talk about it. The Summit of the Future happening September 21st, 22nd to the 23rd. Like I said, they have 2 days. They're doing what they're calling action days on the 20th and the 21st. They're already starting to gather in New York City for the UN General Assembly Week, which is, of course, an annual gathering of the United Nations. My latest article, which was published just last week, is called "The Summit of the Future is Only Weeks Away, Yet the Public Remains Ignorant." And this is what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to rehash too much of what I've done in previous videos. So if you're totally new to this topic, you can go to theconsciousresistance.com. You can find, a half dozen reports I've done. I've done interviews with Jakob Nordengard, who's from Switzerland and Sweden, and he's one of the only other researchers I know who's really paying attention to this. And so the information's all there. But what I do want to update you on is the latest, because if you've been paying attention, that the UN is planning to sign something called the Pact for the Future. And here we go. Here's the official website. New York Summit of the Future 20 to 21 action days on the 22nd and 23rd, the summit. Not only are they're going to sign the Pact for the Future, they're planning on signing something called the Global Digital Compact, as well as the Declaration on Future Generations. And in fact, why don't you just hear it directly from the UN themselves? And then you can tell me whether or not you think, am I being crazy? Let's let the UN speak for themselves first, and do your best to just take them for their words, and then we'll dissect it.
The Summit of the Future is designed for the leaders of the world to take a look at the whole global architecture, at how we do international cooperation, and to make it better. The most important ingredient is trust. The summit is going to adopt 3 agreements: a pact for the future, a global digital compact, and a declaration on future generations. The Pact for the Future has 5 chapters on sustainable development, peace and security, youth and future generations, science and technology, and transforming global governance. You look at the UN and you think governments are the key players, and that's true. They're the ones sitting around the table, but they do so on behalf of their people. Civil society actors, young people have been involved throughout and will be at the summit. Private sector will be here in recognition of the massive role they have in shaping people's lives and opportunities today. This summit is for and by everyone, and everyone should see themselves reflected in it. The summit is not just 4 days in September. Most of the seeds that we plant at this summit will take some time to grow and flourish, and all of us have to be involved in holding governments responsible for living up to their commitments on the international stage. It's going to take all of us to make this summit a success.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that. So it's going to take all of us for the Summit of the Future, they claim. And, your perception of that video largely depends on what you believe about the United Nations. If you believe the United Nations is truly a benevolent organization, then, what they say probably sounds magical. But if you're like me and those of us who've come to be skeptical of proclamations from the UN, you essentially take what they say and just reverse it. And I hate to say that because it's a little bit simplistic, but I think it is many times it really is that. If they're talking about freedom and they want to protect privacy, you probably should be skeptical. And the worst part of it of all is that they get good people who are, just wanting to be out there doing good in the planet, and they bring them on board to the United Nations. And at the lower levels, people are like, I don't know what you right-wing conspiracy theorists are talking about. I'm working for the UN, and we're building, shelters in poor countries, and we're working on permaculture, and we're working on different solutions that might sound like good things. And that's the crazy thing about it, is that if you look at what the United Nations talks about, and even what we talk about, the People's Reset, there is an overlap. But the big difference is this. They believe as technocrats that they have, somehow can speak for us, and they're going to centrally plan and centrally manage the whole of society to decide what's good for you. Whereas the movements that I'm a part of and the solutions focus, we're saying, hey, why don't we as individuals choose to live a better way and grow our own food and do these different things, but not with a gun to your head. That's what the United Nations will become. Currently, of course, it's not, but that is what the Summit of the Future is about. The Summit of the Future and the Pact of the Future are a huge step, guys, in the direction of a totalitarian world government. And I don't feel like I'm being hyperbolic saying that. I know that some people will hear that and be like, okay, this guy's delusional. I don't think that is short of reality. So the Pact of the Future, as I've been reporting on, the most worrisome aspect that you need to know about is this. The Pact for the Future discusses an emergency platform. Now, as I've been reporting for the last year, there's organizations like the Climate Governance Commission, the Stimson Center, who are all funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and Gates Foundation, who have been saying that we need to declare a planetary emergency. They're calling upon the UN at the Summit of the Future, at the signing of the Pact of the Future, to declare a planetary emergency and basically say that because of climate change and the so-called poly crisis, the multiple crises that we're dealing with, then we need to accelerate the race to these SDGs and the Agenda 2030. And so there's multiple elements of this. The Pact of the Future is sort of like, okay, we're bringing everybody back on board, getting all the countries, and make no mistake, every 193 member states of the UN is planning on signing this. There have been a bunch of smaller countries, more developing countries, complaining about their voices being left out. But by and large, nobody is questioning the fundamental assumptions and foundations of this document, which is that the UN should have more power. And as I've been reporting on, there's also discussions of UN 2.0, and they're saying it's time to remake the UN because the UN needs to be, quote, fit for purpose, this sort of thing, right? And so they're saying, because as you can see, if you're looking at my screen in my article, global shocks require global government. They're basically saying, because we're dealing with a poly crisis and pandemics and war and famine and economic chaos, these problems are so great that no single nation can handle this on their own anymore. Instead, we need to let go of the ideas of national sovereignty and focus on global governance. They don't use the word global government anymore, or world government, because they know people are concerned about it. They like to say multilateralism or global governance and global governance structures, global governance schemes, etc. But you can rest assured it's going in that same direction. So as I wrote here, the third draft of the Pact of the Future was released on August 27th. So it's just been a couple of weeks. And it's currently being reviewed by the UN member states. This draft contains discussions around global shocks and how these shocks will require a global response. For example, one section titled, "We will strengthen the international response to global shocks," states that there is a need for coordinated and multidimensional international response to complex global shocks and the central role of the United Nations in this regard. They define complex global shocks as events that, quote, have severely disruptive and adverse consequences for a significant proportion of countries and the global population. These shocks would require a, quote, multidimensional stakeholder and whole of government, whole of society response. They say that armed conflict does not constitute a complex global shock, but could lead to, quote, impacts across multiple sectors. And this is the key part, is they say these global shocks would require the activation of emergency platforms. And these discussions of emergency platforms are already built into the latest drafts of the Pact for the Future. If you've been following my work, you know that I've been following it since they released the Pact of the Future Zero draft. And let me see if they've released the latest version. We'll check it live here. So they've got the Zero draft and they've got revisions. Like I said, the latest one I saw was the third version that came out. Right here it says revision 3 is available. And they've basically been waiting for more comments from the member states. We're just over a week away from this starting. So I'm guessing within the next week, we're going to get the final version. If we do, we might not even see it. The people might not even actually see the final version until it's already been signed at the Summit of the Future. but I'm keeping my eye on it. And the third version, as I said, does include this discussion of emergency platforms, which could grant the UN more power to respond to these so-called planetary emergencies. And the UN says that it will present member states with, quote, protocols for convening and operationalizing emergency platforms based on flexible approaches to respond to a range of different complex global shocks. So that's what's going to be presented to the member states at the Pact, the Summit of the Future. They're going to say, look, here's some ideas, some protocols. Is everybody on board with this? Cool. And that could very well include the same thing that so many people were fighting with the pandemic agreement coming through the Summit of the Future. They might decide, okay, well, screw the Pact, the pandemic agreement. We can just sneak it in the Summit of the Future. Nobody's paying attention over here. And it's interesting, too, because the UN does pay lip service to sovereignty and says the emergency platforms will only be convened for a finite period, and they will not be a standing institution or entity with respect to national sovereignty. And this is because, of course, critics of the UN fear that these emergency platforms will be seized upon and used to grant the UN new legal powers. And I'm one of those critics who believes that. And as I've been reporting, the organization Climate Governance Commission, they've been calling for this emergency platform and planetary emergency for more than a year. In November 2023, they put out a report titled Governing Our Planetary Emergency. And in that report, they specifically call for the UN during the Summit of the Future to declare a planetary emergency. And there's some other aspects of this I'll get into in a moment in terms of resetting the financial system. But let's just talk a little bit about this planetary emergency idea and where it comes from. By a show of hands out there in the internet land, how many people, and I'd love it if you physically raised your hand wherever you're at and just let the people around you think you're weird. How many of you are familiar with the Club of Rome? Okay, I see a few hands going up. Awesome. Good to know. So the Club of Rome is really a major source for this. Now, while the World Economic Forum and the United Nations are more well known, less people know of the Club of Rome. They've sort of been in the background, but they've been around since the 60s and 70s, and they really were the progenitors of this idea that using the environmental movement, or global warming is what they called it at the time, the climate, to push for their control and ultimately to reduce population. That's what this comes back to, my friends. So the Club of Rome, they said that they had originally put out a report back in 2019. It was called Planetary Emergency Plan, and they were the first ones to really start talking about this idea of declaring a planetary emergency. This came out before COVID, but guess what? They later released it again in August 2020 after the beginning of COVID 1984, and they described it as, quote, a roadmap for governments and other stakeholders to shift our societies and economies to bring back balance between people, planet, and prosperity. So this is all coming back from the Club of Rome, and ultimately, this idea is, of course, meant to reinforce this idea in people's minds that we are literally about to just, fall into despair if the governments don't come together as a one world government. And even though it never uses that term, like I said, they talk about multilateralism and global governance. The outcome's the same: United Nations with more authority to act and compel nations to comply with its edicts. And in fact, under a section titled Transforming Global Governance, which if you guys just heard the Summit of the Future video from the UN a moment ago, they name 5 things that are important. They say sustainable development and transforming global governance. This is right from their documents. The UN document outlines action 4, and it says, quote, we will transform global governance and reinvigorate the multilateral system to tackle the challenges and seize the opportunities of today and tomorrow. And it goes on to describe different ways that they plan to transform the UN. This is where the whole discussion on UN 2.0 comes in, my friends. I don't know if they're going to do it, but there has been discussion between the Club of Rome and the Stimson Center and others that they should invoke the UN Charter. I can't remember the top of my head which number it is, but invoke some section of the UN Charter and potentially try to remake the UN National Security Council, which basically means remake who's in control. They claim they want to make it less US centric. And of course, shortly after this meeting, the BRICS nations are meeting up soon. And I know there's a lot of people in the truth movement who've fallen for this idea that, oh, well, the NATO Western countries, they're bad, but Russia and China, they're going to come save the day. Yeah, I don't see that happening, my friends. All these people support CBDCs, digital IDs. They might come in different ways. They might sell it to their home populations in different ways. But no, they're not on your team. They are not here to save you. Go ask some Russians and Chinese how free they feel with their government's restrictions and see if it's any better for the United States. Maybe for some of you it might be. We all have different preferences. The point is, we shouldn't fall into this trap of thinking that there are some nations who are going to fight back. That doesn't mean there's not good people anywhere, and that doesn't mean that every everybody in the UN's bad, of course. Let's just be realistic here. But absolutely at the highest levels, these people know what they're doing. They're pushing for a planetary emergency. They're trying to propagandize our brothers and sisters to convince them that the world is on the edge of chaos, and the only thing we can do to prevent it is to come together as one world, and it's going to eventually get to the point of talking about reducing population. And that is absolutely a part of the Club of Rome. Here, let me just go ahead and go back to that since I'm going to mention that. And in a moment, if I don't say it, somebody remind me about the movie Humane. I wanted to say something on that in case you hadn't seen that. So in like 5 minutes, somebody comment Humane if you can. So the Club of Rome, let's just jump back to them before we talk about the emergency. Or maybe I didn't mention it in this article. But let me just go, let's just lay it out for you. The Club of Rome first talked about the idea of reducing population or making humanity being the problem back in the 70s, but really their most infamous report is from 1991. And let me just go ahead and pull it up. I don't want to misquote myself. 60 days. This was my previous article saying the UN Summit of the Future is in 60 days and nobody's paying attention. I've kind of been writing these articles for a while. Let me see if this one has the reference I want. I don't think so, but let's go to the Club of Rome. Okay. Club of Rome, planetary emergency. Where does this come from? Again, the Club of Rome is directly involved with the World Economic Forum. Club of Rome was founded in 1968. They helped the World Economic Forum become what it is, of course, with the help of Henry Kissinger, Klaus Schwab. And even on the 50th anniversary of the World Economic Forum, they looked back at their history and they said at the 1973 meeting, Aurelia Piche, who's an Italian industrialist who co-founded the Club of Rome with Alexander King, they presented a speech on the now infamous book, Limits to Growth. And Alexander King was also responsible for a follow-up report titled, in 1991, titled The First Global Revolution. It is this report under a section titled The Common Enemy of Humanity is Man, which has this section which has been quoted before and they claim has been taken out of context. But I'm going to read the whole thing to you. It says, quote, in searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. In their totality and in their interactions, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which demands the solidarity of all peoples. All these dangers are caused by human intervention. It is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy, then, is humanity itself. Now, they claim that has been taken out of context, but that's the kind of people that are behind the Summit of the Future, the Club of Rome, these organizations. And this is not their last step. I share this in my other article. You can go look here. They have this timeline here. It leads to September 2024, Summit of the Future, adopts Pact of the Future, multiple instruments. And then they go into 2026. They're going to have more conferences, of course, but they're talking about reviewing the UN Charter by 2026. Conference follow through 26 to 2030. You know, they're planning for 2030. This is a remake of the UN that we are watching happen, and most people have no idea. The other thing I just want to mention really briefly is that a big part of this is about resetting the financial system. They've mentioned this multiple times that we need a new Bretton Woods moment. Bretton Woods is, of course, the post-World War II creation of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, which they're known as multilateral development banks, and they've been used around the world to rob and extort developing countries and then put them in debt and take their resources. You guys heard about this if you know the work of John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman. They want to do more of that and they want to make it easier, but they want to sell it under this idea of an international financial infrastructure that is going to be reformed so it, quote, supports countries equitably during systemic shocks and makes the financial system more stable. And under Section 82, it says the growing frequency and intensity of global economic shocks has slowed down progress on the completion of the SDGs. The solution is, quote, recognize the role of special drawing rights in strengthening the global financial safety net in a world prone to systemic shocks. Look, I'm not an expert on the SDRs, but I will be interviewing James Corbett hopefully really soon about this. James, if you hear this, I'd like to interview soon. I haven't emailed him yet, but there you go. The SDRs are not considered a currency, but they are considered foreign exchange reserve assets, which allow the IMF member nations to exchange SDRs for different currencies. And James Corbett's been warning about the SDRs potentially becoming a world reserve currency all the way back in 2013. So the fact that the Summit of the Future and the Pact for the Future are discussing these SDRs and multilateral development banks and resetting the financial system and creating a new Bretton Woods moment, it means something big is coming up, my friends. They're going to sign this Pact for the Future. It's likely going to include some language about emergency platforms. It's going to include some language about remaking the UN and about, you know, the new Bretton Woods moment, new financial infrastructure architecture. It's going to be a big moment in their race to the world government. And I wish more and more people were paying attention, but unfortunately they're not. So as I shared earlier, I will be in New York City next week. I will be reporting live. I won't be doing an episode of this show, but probably by Friday or Saturday, I'll pop in with a video from New York City outside of the United Nations building and reporting on whatever I find. I mean, good God, wouldn't it be great if I ran into Klaus Schwab? That would be a fun one. We'll see what happens. But either way, I'm going to report for you guys on what's happening there and you know, how things are going. So thank you for the reminder, humane. All right. So let me tell you guys about this before we wrap up this segment, because as I was alluding to, and I encourage you to go deeper, don't take my word for it, but this whole agenda is about population control, about reducing population. You can go back and find the article. I'll link it below, the one titled 60 Days that UN, some of the future is happening in 60 days, and most people don't know, that I wrote. And I linked to a direct video and transcript from Dennis Meadows, who's involved with the Club of Rome. And he doesn't even try to hide it. He says, like, look, if we're going to make it through these crises, we're going to have to reduce the population. Now we can do it voluntary and it'll be easier, or we can, you know, he kind of like doesn't really point out what else is there if it's not voluntary. Well, we're going to find out. But what I wanted to talk about real briefly, because I'm going to wrap up soon, I smell Miriam making popcorn. She's been making organic, non-GMO popcorn at home, and man, I'm in it for it. So I got to get the popcorn soon. But I wanted to mention this population control aspect a little deeper. If you are familiar with that, and if you're also familiar with predictive programming, which I've written articles about, predictive programming is basically this idea that the predator class, you know, the powers that wish they were, they seed messages in our pop culture. I kind of touched on this earlier about how you can go back and see that there's been movies and TV shows that have been putting 9/11 and the Twin Towers in our faces for a long time before 9/11 ever happened. So I don't know if you would call this movie one of those things. Here, let me go and pop it on screen. It's called Humane, and it came out earlier this year. Miriam and I watched it earlier. And I think it's entertaining enough as far as movies go, but it might be kind of hard to watch. The main reason I watched it, besides being mildly entertaining, is to sort of, you know, I like to see their propaganda. And this is absolutely a pro-euthanasia, pro-eugenics movie, I would say. I mean, there is some kind of making it look negative, but I definitely think this is some predictive programming. I won't spoil it for you, but, you know, you can watch the trailer and basically get the gist of it. And pretty much what it's about is a future where you know, they start out right at the beginning. There's like news broadcasts, climate change is ravaging the planet, this and that. Oh, the government passes a new law. And then there's something, Department of Citizens, something or other. And basically you can quote unquote enlist. And when you enlist, it's to euthanize yourself, to kill yourself. And when you kill yourself, your family gets money for it. And this is something they promote on TV, where like they literally highlight, here are our latest citizens who enlisted for the good of everyone. And they're like, so-and-so is a 33-year-old woman working at a diner, and she decided to give up her life to better her family. And they highlight these people and make it a big thing. Now, the crazy thing is, of course, depending on where you're listening from, this might be already normal. I know that there are Scandinavian countries and in Canada and others who are starting to go more in that direction. Now, just like with most things, there's a line, a reasonable line, right? Like if somebody has got a terminal illness and they're like, dude, I don't want to be miserable and have all my organs shut down over the next 8 to 9 months. Can I just euthanize myself and I'm ready to go and I want to have some dignity? Like that's the best case scenario, right? But as with all these things, there's always going to be, the more it gets normalized, then it gets to way it is in some countries. And this is not, I think, this isn't propaganda. I've seen the reports. There are instances where people who are just depressed can just show up and say, hey, I'm depressed. And then before you know it, there's, of course, maybe some visits for the doctor or whatever, and they're able to euthanize themselves. We don't want this sort of thing to become normalized. And that's what this movie is about. And basically the family, they start arguing amongst themselves, but some of the family members are super pro about this. One of the guys on TV and saying, oh, we're thinking about lowering the age and making it where people under 18 can even enlist. It's a trippy movie, guys, but it's definitely something that I need you to pay attention to. I mean, I don't necessarily recommend watching the movie unless you're just looking for a movie to watch and you want to understand propaganda, which I do enjoy doing. But yeah, since it came up, like we're talking about population control, I figured I might as well mention that, and we could talk about that. So we're going to take one more quick break. We're going to come back with, I'm going to announce my exit and build 45-day challenge. Then we're going to end with a music video, and I'm going to go have some popcorn. We'll be right back, guys. Thank you for being here. Stay tuned. So I've recently partnered with my friend Sean Hawkins of the company Cultivated Mind. He focuses on organic mushroom extracts, which are designed to help you physically, mentally, and maybe even more than that. I've just been testing them out recently. You may have seen my interview with Sean discussing this. We went over some of the specific benefits of the various types of mushrooms that Sean uses. I think it's a really exciting product to be a part of because not only are they organic, they're non-GMO, but if you know anything about mushrooms, as more and more of us have been learning about the benefits of mushrooms, not just psychedelic mushrooms, but all types of mushrooms, then you understand that they are a great boon to your health. So Sean recently hooked me up and I've been trying the Brain Squared, which is for gut pea flower extract, ashwagandha. I also recently picked up the Radiant Energy, which is for pre and post workout. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 times a week and now starting to take these before and after. These feature cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And finally, he's got Immune Renew, which is obviously for immunity. This one features chaga, turkey tail, reishi, maitake, shiitake, and extract of nattokinase. I encourage you to go visit the website. It is cultivated-mind.com. And of course, we have a special deal and a discount for those of you who want to purchase them through my link at cultivated-mind.com/cm/broze, BROZE. You can check out the link on the screen right now, or wherever you're watching, check out the link below the video. So you can find that link on theconsciousresistance.com. That's my friend Sean, his company Cultivated Mind. They're based in Houston, Texas. Functional organic mushroom extracts. You can click that link at theconsciousresistance.com. So I am going to be launching a 45-day exit and build challenge. If you've been following regularly, or if you've read my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which you can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to, then you've heard me talk about exit and build, especially because we're in this election season and there's a lot of propaganda to overcome. And so I'm hitting it hard and trying to really promote real tangible solutions. So before I tell you about this challenge, I actually want to define these terms and make sure you understand what I'm talking about. So let's start with the conscious resistance, which is basically the movement, if you will, that I've been involved in, and the website I started, and the network, and the book, my other books, the Conscious Resistance Trilogy. I posted this on social media earlier. The message of the conscious resistance is essentially this: the struggle for a more free, ethical, and just world will not come from confronting the physical institutions of power alone. Rather, the fight for individual liberty and collective liberation is twofold: the fight for liberty in the physical realm, as well as the personal internal struggle. I call the personal struggle the fight against the internal tyrants, namely our doubts, fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs, which can prevent us from being the best version of ourselves. Our best selves just so happens to be what the world needs at this moment in time. I came to the conclusion that the fight for freedom is both internal and external after my own battles with depression, suicide attempts, and drug use. After I was sent to prison, I began my healing journey, diving deep into prayer and meditation as I discovered my spiritual self. When I was released in 2008 and started to wake up to the realities of the drug war, political conspiracies, and crimes of government, I began attending protests, rallies, and marches. I quickly recognized that some of my new activist friends were not interested in the spiritual side of things. And with time, I did meet folks who were interested in healing, prayer, meditation, spiritual growth, and the exploration of the world beyond the 5 senses. I attended many meditations, conscious raves, meetups, etc. And however, with time, with this group, I found that many of them did not want to hear about the problems of the physical world. Instead, they preferred to stick their heads in the sand and only welcomed good vibes. Neither of these crowds had the full picture, and I believed that I wanted to do something to help bridge that gap. And so in 2013, I launched the Conscious Resistance Network as a place to post my journalism that was just beginning then, and to explore spiritual, esoteric, and paranormal topics. And of course, this is also the beginning of kind of promoting a spiritual anarchist message. The goal of the Conscious Resistance continues to be helping people realize the necessity for both sides of this equation and recognizing that government is immoral, ineffective, and dangerous. So that is what the Conscious Resistance is about. One more example here. I retweeted my friend Carrie Wedler back in April saying, this is essentially the message of the conscious resistance. What's the point of knowing or seeking truth if you're miserable, or if you allow them to drive your attention? And Carrie said, the truth is supposed to set you free. But if you know the truth and you spend your time and energy being angry and fixated on it, are you really free? If you're constantly gripped by what evil people in power do, the system still has its claws in you. In my opinion, one of the most powerful rebellions is to cultivate your own inner peace and freedom in the face of perpetual chaos and authoritarianism. And that is along with that's basically the message of the conscious resistance. And I wanted to start there before we define exit and build specifically, because the conscious resistance is the foundation for exit and build. It starts with the awareness that we have a physical and an physical external world, as well as an internal spiritual, emotional world as well. And so it's the bringing together of these two things, which are what I call the conscious resistance. I mean, I think it's all of this together is what really lays the foundation for what leads to exit and build. First, you recognize this is a physical fight and a spiritual fight. That's the conscious resistance. So then you not only focus your energy on the external world, but you do that inner healing. And I'm not going to tell you how. I have my own ideas, but whatever works for you to work through your trauma, your insecurities, your doubts and fears, so the best you can rise to the occasion, then do it, my friends. And don't let them control your energy and your focus. So then once you start doing that, now you're not just awake to conspiracies, you're awake spiritually, internally, psychologically. You're becoming more free in that way. And then as you see, okay, the world is imperfect, there's some corruption going on, what can I do about it? And for me, what I decided I could do about it is called exit and build, focusing on building parallel systems, not focusing my energy on the politics, not focusing on apathy or violence, but instead focusing on what I can do right now in this time. And we are about just over 45 days from the U.S. election. And whether you're not in the U.S. or whether you're there or not, I encourage you to be a part of this challenge. We're launching the 45-day exit and build challenge. It's going to start next Friday. So this Friday, I'll send an email out for those who are subscribed to my email list, and we'll break this down further. And there'll be a short video explaining it, but I'm going to give it to you guys first. It's going to launch next Friday, though, and it's going to be 6 Fridays in a row. So just over, like I said, 42 days, and then 3 days later, the U.S. election rolls around. So it'll be 45 days exactly to the election. And for those 6 weeks, we're going to go through this exit and build concept. We're going to look at it holistically from, let me see, I've got this list here, and I'll share it with you guys. I haven't shared this publicly yet anywhere. Here's my list. So week 1 is going to be focused on food. Week 2 is going to be focused on money. Week 3 is going to be focused on technology. Week 4 on land. Week 5 on education and knowledge. And week 6 on mindset and habits. And then I think we will do a 7th week, and that is going to be sort of wrapping it up, talking about thinking holistically about these ideas. So the goal here, the sort of challenge that I'm talking about, is participate in this 45-day challenge with me. Tune in every week. Again, if you sign up for my email list, you'll get these updates. And for that first week, we'll talk about food. And for 7 days after that, try to implement some of the ideas I share and see what kind of exit and build goals you can accomplish. And then the next week, we'll talk about money. And you just keep working on these goals. And fine, if you want to vote when the election rolls around, do that. But at least for the next 45 days, try this exit and build concept. Try to take your money, your time, your spirit, your energy, your finances away from these people and put it into alternative systems. That's, to me, is the real answer, because they're working on the summit of the future. They're working on global digital compact, pact for the future, trillions of dollars. Every multinational corporation, every government in the world collaborated on this. It's not hopeless, but the answers aren't going to come from politics, and they're not going to come from apathy. Instead, I believe it's time for us to reclaim our power, that divine source that's within us, and start focusing on building alternative parallel systems so that the young ones who are coming after us and who haven't even been born yet, that they can be born into a world where there still is this concept of liberty and privacy. They are not going to keep that alive in the mainstream. If you stay in the smart cities, you will not be able to thrive and survive. You're going to have to eke by. You're going to have to make compromises. You have to get a digital ID, have your face scanned. You will be sucked into that system if you don't prepare. I'm trying to prepare as much as people, not for doomsday, but for the better world that we know is possible. But it's not going to come from just waiting around for Trump or RFK or Peter Thiel or Eric Schmidt or JD Vance or any of these people or Kamala Harris. It's going to come from you getting involved locally in your community. And again, if you're going to be involved in politics, at least do it locally. Town council, school board, city, whatever. Try there if you must. But even if you insist on voting, I encourage you to take this 45-day challenge, and I will walk you through these different steps. I will provide solutions that I'm using. I'm not just talking about this. I'm living as much of this life as possible, not using banks, not talking to certain institutions in the government, doing my best to stay in line with my values and my morals and principles. But let me go ahead and let's elaborate on this exit and build concept. What exactly is exit and build? We outlined the conscious resistance. Let's talk about exit and build. I posted this as well. My message of exit and build is essentially this. We know nearly every government in the world and hundreds of major corporations are pushing towards the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or what I call the technocratic state. You should try to do what you can to resist. However, we shouldn't assume it can be avoided, especially not via politics. Instead, put your energy and your focus into preparing for these systems and making sure you are not dependent on them. We saw with COVID-19 84 how many people were forced to get a shot, wear a mask, get a PCR test, etc., because they did not plan ahead and they were dependent on their jobs or travel. If we saw those tactics played out in the past, we should assume they will come back again. They will come back in the form of carbon credit wallets, digital IDs, digital IDs for voting or to stop fraud or illegal immigration, and of course CBDCs or stablecoins. And if you're dependent on the grocery stores for your food, the government for your income, the banks have all your money, you're in debt, you have little to no skills, you're still using big tech apps and tracking devices, etc., remaining free is going to be very difficult when these systems roll out. Exit and build is about preparing for those systems, what I call slavery systems, and making sure you are not dependent and can thrive outside of them. This is where the build part comes in. Myself and many, many people are focused on creating new parallel alternative systems for economics, education, health, technology, food production, and distribution. We know this is a lofty goal, but it is absolutely necessary. This is why I'm so tough on people who are still playing political games and doing nothing but that. Sure, some people might be living the life of self-sufficiency, community interdependence, but most are not. Most people are sitting around doing nothing but waiting for politicians to save the day. And when these systems roll out in the next couple years, they will be hopelessly dependent on them because they did not take precaution and plan ahead. The change I advocate for is not an overnight change. In fact, real change doesn't happen overnight. That's a lie that has been sold to the people, especially the idea that voting is the only way or even effective way to make change. I'm thinking of my children, their children, and my great-great-grandchildren, people who I will never meet. What kind of a world are we leaving behind for them? If you're putting your faith into politics and politicians with a proven record of lying and corruption, you are selling out yourself, your ancestors who worked hard to get you here, and the future generations. And again, the exit and build concept was first outlined in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. So stay tuned. If you're interested in that, I'll be putting out more info. Like I said, sign up at theconsciousresistance.com. I'll send an email this Friday with more details. And then next Friday, we're going to go live. We're going to do 7 weeks in a row. We're going to break down this idea holistically. And it's truly a challenge. So, if you're already on board, please participate. But those of you who feel like voting's the best thing you can ever do, and this is the most important election ever, if you're somehow made it here and you haven't hung up on me and said goodbye, then please try this challenge. What is the point of life if not challenging yourself every now and then? So even if you think my ideas are garbage, if you think I'm totally delusional and politics is the best way ever to solve our problems, give me a chance. Give yourself a chance, more importantly. Try this challenge. Sit through 1 week. Do 1 week of the challenge and see what comes of that. And then if you feel something positive, go to the next week and do that. And then by the end of it, if you stick through after 6-7 weeks, maybe you'll actually see that there are other ways to empower yourself that don't involve politicians and liars and criminals. So that's where we're going to leave it right now, everybody. I really appreciate you guys being here with me tonight. Let me just check my notes. Yep. I think I hit it all. Last thing I will just remind you again is the People's Reset. People's Reset happening, of course, in 2 weeks. The weekend after the Summit of the Future, myself and some friends are going to Bath, UK. This will be my second time in Bath. Really excited. And we are going to host for 3 days the first activation in the UK. That's the Mexico one. There we go. People's Reset UK. September 27th to the 29th, Apex Hotel. There's still time to get tickets. You can get 3-day tickets. You can get single-day tickets. You can also just buy a ticket to the concert if you want to hear me perform with Dub FX. We will be live streaming all of the main stage talks, all 24 presenters. If you come in person, there's going to be 31 workshops that you can check out that are part of your ticket. There's community networking, there's concert, there's cacao ceremony, there's gathering, there's meetups, there's all kinds of fun decentralized stuff happening. We got a lot of great speakers, some you've heard of, some you've never heard of, but they're all solutions focused. And I guarantee if you tune in and you actually implement these ideas in your life, it will change your life for the better. Because the greater reset, the people's reset, is largely built on the concept of exit and build. That's what we all focus on during the talks. How do we help make the exit and build journey easier for other people? Well, we share ideas of what they're doing in the UK. We share ideas of what they're doing in Ecuador and what they're doing in Mexico and Canada, the US, Australia. We all come together. We distribute those ideas. We put the talks out for free. And if everybody actually gets activated and motivated, inspired, and applies them to their life, guess what? We create a better world. That's where it goes, my friends. I believe it's possible. I know it's possible. I wouldn't be putting in the time and energy every single day that I do to try to do this if I didn't think it was possible. I would just go to my land and say goodbye to you guys if I thought it was all screwed and hopeless. So despite what some people claim, I'm not black-pilled. Whitney Webb's not black-pilled. Ryan Christian's not black-pilled. We're working on the Independent Media Alliance. There will be new information about that coming very soon. We're so excited to share what we're working on, guys. Just stay tuned. And as I said, I won't be doing a live show next week. I will be at the Summit of the Future. Stay tuned for those reports. Please go check out the 15th episode of the Pyramid of Power, the Pedo-Class. Viewer discretion advised. Share it with your friends and family. If you haven't watched it yet, start at chapter 1. Work your way all the way to 15. And please just, keep your head together. This is a tough time. It's going to get more and more confusing and exhausting as we get closer to the election beyond. And I think that's just going to be the beginning of whatever chaos they got planned. And that'll all be happening post Summit of the Future. Emergency platforms will be available to groups like the UN. We have to stay strong here in our hearts, here in our minds, and together. You're not alone. We're in this together, my friends. We're going to end tonight with a new song from Presence, who's going to be playing at the People's Reset UK, along with myself and Dub FX. You guys are going to enjoy this one. This is called PSYOP. Until next time, my friends, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Social media deliver propaganda. Shutting down all of the psyop, man. Another false flag now. A propaganda delivery device, A possibility the people stop buying into the puppetry. Embrace a life fulfilled by what's in harmony. False selection, use discretion, find perfection of our honesty. Honest with ourselves right now. If we honest with ourselves, we see theater for the masses that play. Masses that play. Call the curtain, I'll determine what to do and what is right for me. Self-responsibility. Disengage from the world as a stage. We got to channel our rage into productivity. We got to know absolute instead of relativity. Gotta lose attachment to emotional negativity. We got to disengage from the publicity of all the actors, actresses who put us in harm's way. We got to stop the worship of human sacrifice, pedophile, blaze the fire on Babylon and their conspiracy. They coming with another psyop stage, another false flag plan. False flag plan. Hey. First casualty of war is the truth, and we ignoring the scam. Ignoring all the scams right now. Keep on shouting from the rooftop. Disengage from Instagram. Instagram. Hey. The social media that live our propaganda to the palm of your hand. Palm of your hand. Social media that live our propaganda to the palm of your hand. Already admitted to all the vax damage. A little fact sandwich between a couple piece of lies on toast. COVID misdiagnosed. A big nothing burger reduce a population with injected murder. Public somehow forgotten that MAGA really meant Java catastrophe. Clear people out of the street, soon replaced by a new definition. American idiot shit, and in diapers can't formulate a sentence without a script to write it. One false flag to the next. Look to your right now, look to your left. No free speech on Twitter or X. In the car gonna wreck if you drive all your text. When your mind always jump from a thing to the next. Manage I can make you Pornhub sex. Everybody compete for the baddest specs. Get a new iPhone cause it got better specs. So perplexed, people haven't learned yet. Government only giving lies and facts. Run a hamster wheel from your birth to your death. Gotta work to your sweat, gotta pay that debt. Stop, meditate and calm your breath. Stop, meditate and calm your breath. Stop, meditate and calm your breath. Because they coming with another psyop stage, another false flag plan.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.